and you should have seen that the red light in the left corner of your screen started blinking, and that's telling you that the session is now being recorded. So today's webinar is for high school students with intellectual disability and their families interested in open employment. You're very welcome if you're not of that age group, but we're just telling you that that's what we're talking about specifically today. We're going to talk about all the important things you need to know about good school to work transition planning, what it is, what works, how families can be involved, and the supports you can access. We will also look at the Everyone Can Work website, and we have a guest speaker talking about their open employment experience. The Everyone Can Work website and webinars have been developed by Inclusion Australia. Inclusion Australia is the national peak organisation that represents people with intellectual disability and their families. The project is funded by an NDIS ILC grant. ILC stands for Information, Linkages and Capacity Building, and aims to create inclusive communities. Having a job in open employment is truly one of the most important and best ways to help people with intellectual disability be truly included in our community. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar is one of a series of 4. This is number 2, and there are 3 other workshops for people at different ages and stages, and all of them are designed to help people with intellectual disability have success in open employment. So we thought we'd just start with a little icebreaker activity. It's very hard to do icebreakers when we're online. And basically, we just want you to feel involved in the webinar and comfortable using the chat facility to ask questions. So we'd just like you to put into the chat facility now, why did you decide to come to this webinar? Or what is it that you're hoping to get out of this webinar? So if we have some information on that, I can make sure that we weave answers to your questions in at the appropriate times. So be really delighted right now if anyone was able to say. So looking to support in NDIS participants, I'm guessing you're a provider or a support coordinator or a support worker. That's great. Is there anything else that people are hoping to get out of today's session? Aha, you're exactly the person we're here to talk to. My son is in year 11 next year and need to plan for the future as I haven't really thought about it. I'm going to make some comments about that and how quickly time passes, and one moment they're at school and the next moment you're in danger of having fallen off the cliff. Yes, my great interest is to support my 16-year-old son with Down syndrome in getting some part-time employment. I can talk about that as well. And my child is 15 and we're looking to start him towards work experience. Oh, my team's going to be so pleased at how well we promoted this workshop, because you're all exactly the sorts of people that, that we thought we'd be talking to in year 11. So it looks like we've got quite a number of people with children in about year 9 to year 11, which is exactly, as I said, who we're looking to talk to about today. So yes, by all means, pop your questions into the chat function as we go, and we will do our best to answer them. Shall we move on? Evan. So, employment pathways. One of the reasons that Inclusion Australia is talking about this, and the reason that we developed the website, is that very often young people with intellectual disability go straight from high school into ADEs, that's Australian Disability Enterprises, or day programs. And there's a lot of reasons why this sort of thing happens. Firstly, low community expectations. It's all they can manage. They wouldn't really be able to handle a real job. As long as they're happy with their friends. That's the main thing. So many young people are put on this pathway even when they're at school. And some schools, for example, only offer work experience in an Australian disability enterprise to young people with intellectual disability. They don't provide just a mainstream work experience opportunity even. So people make a whole lot of assumptions about what people with intellectual disability are capable of and what they're not. One other thing is lack of opportunities for casual work. So many young people start learning about work by having a casual job in their mid to late teens. Typical jobs, you know, serving at fast food restaurants or shelf stacking at a supermarket, help young people learn about work, about being on time, clocking in and out, taking instruction, speaking up to unfamiliar adults. It's interesting, one of my sons has been a basketball referee when he was in his teens. And looking back on it, he said the most important thing that being a basketball referee taught him was being able to speak to unfamiliar adults. Another person was telling me how much she was laughing that she turned up early to pick her daughter up from one of Baker's Delight or one of the bakeries, and watched her sweeping and watched how carefully she was sweeping, and had a bit of a snigger to herself at this same young person declared she didn't know how to sweep at home. So she'd certainly learned how to do that at work. And these skills make people more employable later on. The thing is that most teenagers with intellectual disability don't get the same opportunities for casual work as their peers. Another thing is lack of planning. In retrospect, there's a whole lot of families of young people with intellectual disability who talk about the experience of leaving school as like falling off a cliff. One moment you've got a routine, however imperfect, with support. The next moment, everyone else starts doing their end of year 12 exams, and suddenly you're on your own navigating the world of adult employment services. And this abrupt change, particularly if the other adults in the house are working, can cause people to make rushed, uninformed decisions that have really long-lasting consequences. Other issues are traditional employment services, so DES, Disability Employment Services, have eligibility thresholds that many school leavers with intellectual disability may not meet. And so often they can't actually access disability employment services. It's hard to find information about open employment and to navigate different employment support systems. And there are worries about losing the disability support pension. I hope very much that those of you who are online whose children have an intellectual disability have applied for the disability support pension. You can apply for that from age 16. But there's a lot of misunderstandings about the impact on work on the DSP itself. So a lot of closed workplaces, so Australian Disability Enterprises, actually pay such low wages, they pay them at a rate that they assure people that it won't affect their pension. And so people believe that if they earn over that rate, they will lose their pension. But in fact, what happens is that you're allowed to work 29 hours, up to 29 hours a week without losing eligibility for the payment. And then for every dollar over $178 a fortnight, they lose 50 cents of their DSP. So that means that you earn $1 and you lose 50 cents of the pension. So that means that, yes, your pension does slowly go down, but at half the rate that the money you earn goes up. So people are always better off earning more money and getting a little bit less pension. So all of this has made it much harder for people with intellectual disability to choose a pathway to open employment. So we developed the Everyone Can Work website to bring together all the information you need to think about work options and to understand what support's available to you. There have been some recent important changes to supports that we will tell you about with more information on the website. But before we go into all the detail, we try to have a person with intellectual disability talk about their experience as part of this webinar. And today, would you believe, we've decided to use a very special guest presenter, which is actually my son, Julian. And so I wanted to do a big thank you to Julian for being part of this Everyone Can Work webinar. And Julian's going to talk about his open employment experience. And the reason that we've chosen him is because he has actually had a job at the local basketball club canteen since he was 15. So since he was in about mid-year 9 onwards. He started in a work experience position, and I didn't realise when I negotiated this, but a critical agreement that right at the beginning we said, how about he works as work experience, but as soon as he's productive like the other kids, he needs to get paid the same as his peers. And the stadium agreed. And that took a little over a year. So since then, since Julian was 16, Julian has had to log in and out of the employee system and be paid via his bank account, just like his co-workers. So may I introduce Julian McAlpine, who is our guest speaker today. Julian, can you turn yourself on? There we go.
My name is Julian. I am 19 years old. I have 2 brothers and I am the middle son. I play basketball. My club is the Unwilling Gangers. Today I talk about my future. When I am growing up, I want a job during the week like my mom and dad. I want a job so I can get my own money and put it in the bank. I need to save my money so I can buy a house or a car in the future. My girlfriend Sophie and I want to get married in 2026. So I need enough money to buy a house for us to move into by ourselves. We will be a new family. From 2016, I have been working at the Unwilling Basketball Stadium canteen. I like my job. The canteen manager is Katrina. She is my boss. When I arrive at work, I put my apron on. Then I wash my hands. This makes sure there are no germs in the food. I know how to fry hot chips, dim sum, tea cakes, and chicken chips. I like making coffee. I carefully pour the hot milk into the cup. I serve the coffee to the customer. My customers are happy with my coffee. At the end of my shift, I go to the window to get my pay. I hope you come and see me when the car hours is over. I will serve you with a big smile.
Thank you so much for that, Julian. So Julian will just stay on camera for a few minutes if anyone wants to ask him any questions. I might ask him a couple of questions to start with, but if anyone wants to ask him about his experience in his casual job, you're very welcome. So Julian, what's your favourite job in the canteen?
I always work with taste. I was stuck in the fridge, and I was drinking coffee, and I was frying hot foods.
So you like doing the frying of the hot foods and you like
Yeah.
stocking the fridge.
Yeah.
And the person that helps you do that is Tess, isn't it?
Yes. This worker.
She is your support worker. That's right. That's right. And does she do those things for you, or do you do all those things by yourself?
Maybe yes, I can. I'll be careful with the coffee.
You are careful with the coffee. Can you give change? If people buy something for $4 and they give you $5, how much change?
I tend to be a $1 change.
That's right. It is $1 change. Do you know how you got the job in the beginning?
I'm not sure.
No, you're not sure. Because what happened was I went to a workshop where they were talking, the person from the bakery was talking about her daughter's sweeping. And what happened was we had a whole conversation about how young people with intellectual disability don't usually get the opportunity to do casual work. And I think it's an advantage I have from working in the sector that it was sort of top of mind. So we came back from our holidays in the middle of the year, I think, and we walked into the basketball stadium. You can see that Julian plays basketball, and I saw the signs up. They're recruiting for the canteen. And I thought, oh, went on to the game. Then as I walked out, suddenly the penny dropped. Oh my word, that's a classic first job. It says recruiting for the canteen, no experience necessary. But the way they usually did it was to give kids a couple of shifts, and then the ones that looked like they were really interested in it would get the training. So I actually approached the canteen manager and said, would you think about giving my son a go? He has Down syndrome and he's going to take much longer than 2 shifts to learn it. And also said to them that we would provide the support, which I think was really critical, that we said that, because this was pre-NDIS, Julian hadn't, even though the NDIS had started, we hadn't gone in to the NDIS then. And so we actually paid for a support worker. And then he got really good at things and they realised he could make coffee on his own. They had to do a couple of reasonable adjustments because it worked better for him to actually have the thermometer in the coffee rather than just do it by feel. But do you like working at the canteen, Julian?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to coronavirus because Julian, unfortunately, even though he has been working there since Year 9, has not been able to work there this year because there's been no basketballs being allowed to be played, and so therefore the canteen's not open, hasn't been open since March. But you were working all the way until the coronavirus came, weren't you, Julian?
Yes, it is.
So Julian's support work has been gradually phasing out. So one of her difficult jobs is to work herself out of a job. And we had started that process, but coronavirus has got in the way. So Julian can do a lot of things by himself. Interestingly, the hardest thing of all is the tongs with the hot chips into the bag. So it's the fine motor skills of getting that. He's very good at frying by himself. So she stands there and watches him while he fries. And it's only when it's really busy, sometimes she might help him with the serving. But you do the work yourself, don't you, Julian?
Yes, I did.
That's very good. And how many hours did you start? How many hours do you work this job, Julian?
4 or 5.
More like 3 to 4. Yes.
3 or 4.
Yeah. So when you started, I think you worked 2 hours, and then you've worked 3 or 4 hours. But he does get a break in the middle. What do you like about getting the break at the canteen, Julian?
Well, because as having lunch 12 o'clock, I had some of the hot chips and some of the couple fruits.
That's right. You take some water with you and some fruit, but they always give you some hot chips at lunchtime, and that's always a bit of a treat, isn't it?
Yes.
So this has just been a casual job. So this has only ever been on a Saturday. So he's worked sometimes Saturday morning, sometimes Saturday afternoons. At the moment, you're working in the afternoon, aren't you?
Yeah, yep, I am.
All right. So thank you so much, Julian, for sharing that story with us. You can turn your camera and microphone off now, and we're going to keep going with the webinar. So there's a story of genuine casual work in a typical first job where you're not expected to have any experience beforehand. And one of the things that's really important about that job is that it's what we call open employment. So open employment is employment that's open to everyone. It's where people with or without disability work together in regular jobs. It's the same job market most people are in, where you either work as an employee or set up your own business to earn an income. And everyone has the right to open employment, but the NDIS data shows that only 15% of people with intellectual disability are employed in open employment. So why is open employment so important? The thing is that researchers have talked to people with intellectual disability and their family about their employment experiences. They found out that people have a better quality of life and improve physical and mental health when they work in open employment, even if it's only a few hours per week. And this is because earning a fair wage leads to a better standard of living, less risk of poverty. People feel more important and valued due to learning and using skills, and it improves how other people see them. It's really interesting for me if I turn up early to pick up Julian and watch the number of people that deliberately go out of their way to get served by him. There's a small number of kids that avoid him, which I think is all to do with how fast he serves, because he is a bit slower. He's very slow and thoughtful and thorough in what he does. But there's a whole lot of people that that go out of their way to get served. Working in open employment means meeting more people, making more friends, and having more social opportunities. One of the young men at the canteen invited Julian to his 18th birthday party, and Julian doesn't get invited to a lot of birthday parties of people without disability, so that was very exciting. Working in open employment leads to greater independence. Julian, we now drop him off, so he gets dropped off, goes inside by himself, clocks himself on by himself, gets himself organised by himself, and he really, really loves that independence. And people work for longer in open employment and tend to have a fuller life with more purpose and meaning. So the school to work transition, what works? The very first thing, and if you came to last week's one, unsurprisingly, we're saying the same thing again, that research shows that families play a vital role in helping people find and keep work in open employment. In fact, the biggest predictor of success in open employment is family expectation. So therefore, very first tip is have high expectations. Parents who expect their sons and daughters to work in open employment and young people who expect to be a worker in a regular job will have greater success. Don't let people tell you that it's not possible. Don't let people tell you to be realistic. You know your son and daughter better than anyone else, and they know themselves. And if they want to have a go at something, you'd be surprised at what can be achieved. Be involved. Family involvement in school to work transition leads to greater success. And this is involvement at the school in terms of being involved in the transition planning team, helping to find work experience, part-time or casual work. So schools have a lot of responsibility, and it's really important that they do the things that they do for all other students as well. But certainly working together really helps. Start early. Transition planning activities such as work experience can happen from age 15. We don't want to leave transition until year 12. Starting early gives young people time to build their skills, aspirations and confidence, and parents feel more knowledgeable and confident about life after school. Having a school to work transition plan. I have to confess that we didn't actually have a proper one of these, but really we had done all the planning. Schools should have a written, individualised plan that sets out a structured transition process and includes transition goals, such as finding a job or being job ready, activities and supports. The student and the family should be part of the transition planning team, along with relevant school staff who know the student well. And this group should come together at agreed times to review how things are going. So this sort of plan often might include some tailored opportunities for people with intellectual disability. So for example, at the school that we went to, most of the kids, we're in Victoria, so the kids are doing a VCE, a Victorian Certificate of Education, and there's also another thing called a Victorian Certificate of Applied Learning. And certainly the VCAL, the Applied Learning Certificates, which are available all around the country, often have a foundation level that's appropriate for young people with intellectual disability. The thing that you sometimes find out, which we found out the hard way, is not all schools offer that. But it is possible to do an individualised plan. And one of the things that the evidence says really strongly is that on-the-job learning, which could be done in work experience or in a casual job or both, is critical to learning about work. So young people with intellectual disability learn work skills best in the workplace. Schools are required to provide a small amount of work experience, but the research shows that a significant amount of experience will increase the chance of success in open employment after leaving school. So these experiences include extra work experience, volunteering, visiting workplaces, and part-time jobs. So one of the things that we did, and that a lot of that some families do, is to talk to the school about doing more work experience. So everyone has to do work experience in year 10, and that's a 1-week work experience opportunity. So hopefully most of your young people will have an opportunity to do that. But what we know is a week's not a very long time, and we know from much experience that bringing up a young person with intellectual disability often means repeating things again and again so that they really can grasp the understanding or be able to give feedback on the task involved. So you might be able to do something like we did, which was to all the way through year 11 and into year 12 as well, to organise a range of work experience placements. So we organised with the school that Fridays was work experience day. And we did a mixture of work experience that the school found. So the school found some typical stuff, did 10 weeks at McDonald's, did 10 weeks at Big W, did 10 weeks at Bunnings. They found those sort of things. We looked around our networks and we thought, oh yes, the childcare centre that he went to had a really positive attitude towards him. We'll ask if he can be a helper there. And he did a stint as a childcare worker. He did a stint as a hairdresser. So we've tried to think of some different things for him to try. And one of the things to really remember is sometimes a work experience that goes really badly is really helpful. Tells you a lot of things that people don't like. Oh, that might not be a strength. So that can be really helpful. And then what supports are available for the school to work transition? So one of the things to be really clear on is that education systems and schools have responsibilities to help all children transition to adult life, including the good transition planning that we just talked about. But the reality, as we well know, is that students with intellectual disability often need more and greater support than can easily be provided by schools. And this is particularly where the NDIS comes in. Until quite recently, school leavers with intellectual disability mainly used their NDIS plans to work in an ADE or go to a day program. But recent important changes help people with intellectual disability work in open employment with the support starting during high school. So one of the supports for employment that you can get through the NDIS is a thing that's known as SLES, that is School Leaver Employment Supports. And that is available to help with the transition, but it often doesn't kick in until partway through year 12. In our case, Julian's plan renewal was right at the beginning of the year, was in January, and they refused to put in SLES in his year 12 year. Now we're hearing a lot of stories that you can push back against that and say, no, we want SLES in place for when he leaves, but it did make that period between October and December after the school finished a very tricky time. The thing that's really fantastic now that you couldn't get before is that you can get NDIS employment support from the moment that a participant is of legal working age. Now, in many places around Australia, legal working age is 14 years and 9 months, but there is a slightly tricky thing that because of child protection laws, it's actually there's a lot more paperwork, and it's much more demanding of a workplace to have a person there that's under 15. So a lot of organisations, like we found out that our local school library, local library, wouldn't take work experience students who are under 15. So there's a lot of places that won't actually take work experience or even employ people who are under 15. But of course, we're only talking about a 3-month period, so it's not that long. But it means that you can use your NDIS support. So we just described that Julian has a support worker. The other thing that we had along the way was that the giving of change was a big deal. Now, it's just a canteen. It just doesn't serve a broad range of things, as you heard, just some chips and chicken chips and dim sims and potato cakes, plus, ice creams and cold drinks and things like that. Everything in the canteen was priced at the dollar or 50 cents. So either cost $1, $3.50. Nothing costs anything more complex than that. So we did a lot of practice at home with another support worker who had teaching qualifications to practice giving change. So we were able to use, by then, this was probably more when he was in year 11 and even year 12, we were allowed to use our NDIS plan to do that extra supplementary support at home that was different to the work that he did at school, because it was really targeted on his employment itself. You can also use NDIS funding to help to find and keep open employment. So that includes finding some placements or working out a whole, what they call the discovery process, learning out what you like, what you're good at, what your strengths are, what things you might need to work on before you're so-called job ready. And remembering that open employment might be as an employee, might be self-employed, might be a family business, could be a range of things. So the NDIS support funding, in addition to school-provided transition to work activities, can be used very flexibly and helps parents be involved. One of the things you need to be really clear on is that the school must do the things that it is supposed to do, and the NDIS funding can't be used to do things that the school should do. However, you can use your NDIS funding to help families find additional work experience and part-time jobs. So that thing that I did where I had to go and ask the stadium, would you give us a go? You could actually get a support worker to do that for you. That's a really big difference in the NDIS. It can support skills development during work experience and part-time jobs. So like I said, it can support people in the job, but it also can support people learning some skills that are relevant to the job. It helps young people work out and explore what they are interested and would like to do. It's what I just mentioned. Help to develop a resume or portfolio. One of the things that's really helpful for a young person with intellectual disability is to develop a folio rather than your traditional CV. It might actually be a folio. So for instance, you can see I use those photos of Julian because it shows him doing those things by himself. And so people that make a judgment on Julian because his speech is careful or because he's, he has some communication difficulties, if you see him doing it, you can see how speech is not a measure of independence and his ability to do things by himself. So some photos in the portfolio, maybe if they've done a couple of courses along the way, like a barista course or something else could be in there. The teachers could write up competencies. So rather than saying he passed this test, they could talk about the competencies. So in terms of who could create one, this is something we got very lucky. We had a careers advisor at the school who decided to do a little bit of extra PD, and he discovered that portfolios were important. And so he actually put one together that we've just been adding to since Julian left school. But I'm not aware specifically of anyone, but I think one of the best things to do is just ask around your peer support networks for particularly independent providers, just people who, might be mums of kids with intellectual disability who have set up a small business being a support worker. A lot of those sorts of people have might do this sort of work. You know, for me, I would contact the local Down Syndrome Association because they're quite likely to know if there's any people doing that sort of specialised work out there and might be able to link you in. The only thing, and the other thing is you might be able to get support for the student and the family at transition team meetings. So when you're actually having the meetings about the transition, maybe a support worker or another helper could be there for that. The thing that I need to stress really highly is that you must have an employment related goal in your NDIS plan to be able to access employment supports. So you need to say that one of your top goals, or the young person's top goals, is to become job ready or to learn about employment or to actually get a job. It's really important that that be in their plan because that's what triggers the employment supports. So some of what we're talking about is things you can do in the future, but some things you can do right now, today, when you leave the website, when you leave the webinar. Firstly, unsurprisingly, hold similar expectations for your young person with disability as you do for any of your other children. Talk positively with your young person about work. Remind them that, or talk to them about what you like about work. Make the link between having a job and earning an income. This is something that all young people need to do. I don't know whether you've had any friends along the way that tell you how they're going to buy a Porsche when they leave school and live in a penthouse. They're going to do all these things, amazing things that cost all this money. Then you say to them, where are you going to get the money from? And then there's a point, sometimes I think mum and dad will pay for it. Some things say, oh, well, I'll be rich. Well, how are you going to be rich? And that linking of, oh, it's the job to the income. So you saw Julian talk earlier about, I need to get a job so that I can buy a house and buy a car. I can tell you that he likes looking at houses in the paper and he pretty much likes anything that's above $2 million. But in all seriousness, it's understanding that as part of the narrative. So Julian's had a narrative for a very long time. I'm going to marry Sophie. I'm going to marry Sophie. I'm going to buy a car. And then finally I said to him, where are you going to get the money? And he looked at me, where I get money? I said, where do you get money? He goes, the bank. And I said, yeah, you get money from the bank. How's the money going to get into the bank so then you can take it out? And he was like, I have no idea. I said to him, it's your job. That's what mum and dad do. When we go to work, our boss puts the money in our bank account and then we can get it out. And that's what's been really interesting about the part-time. When he was working as work experience, they used to give him the cash. That photo that you saw was when he was doing the work experience and they gave him cash. But when he got good enough to be working and then the money went in his bank account. So then we had to explain that the money goes in the bank account and he can get it out of the bank now because now it's his. So understanding how all that goes together. Are some of jobs they might like to do when they leave school. Encourage interests and get to know what they enjoy and are good at. Encourage fitness and hygiene and social norms. It's really important. One of the things that it can be a bit confronting is particularly people that have been institutionalised or even been in segregated environments like special school for a really long time. They can develop some habits that people sort of put up with and they're not said, no, actually, that's not something that's okay to do in public because those sorts of things can be really big barriers to getting work. Even things that having your hand in your mouth too often, chewing on your thumb. It's like, and I know this from experience, that working out ways to make sure that good hygiene is maintained is really important. Hold them accountable to family expectations about housework and chores. At the same sort of age that other kids are doing chores, your young person should be doing chores. There are chores, there's unpacking the dishwasher and putting dirty clothes out and all sorts of things that could be done that's just part of the daily chores and contribution to the family where there's an expectation of performance. Teach them resilience by giving them opportunities to experience and overcome failure. Sometimes they've got to experience their own consequences and then they'll understand. And that's a really important part of learning about work. Be prepared to think about your network strategically. What classic jobs do you know about in your neighbourhood? I only knew about the basketball stadium canteen because we were really involved in the basketball club and we happened to be in the stadium. The only place they advertised was on the wall of the stadium. What do you actually know that you don't realise that you know? Who do you know who runs or works for an appropriate business? At one point, this actually didn't come to anything, but at one point we had a father of a young man in one of my other son's basketball teams who ran a business and said, oh, if you ever need, if Julian ever needs a job, reach out. Do some local businesses already know your son and daughter? For instance, the welcoming hairdresser that you've been going to for more than a decade. I rang them up and said, could he do a work experience? Be brave and ask about opportunities. This is one of the hardest things to do, is to ask other people to do things. And sometimes you get knocked back. We've been knocked back. Julian, the school that Julian goes to has a different campus for year 9. And so when he was in year 9, he went to the different campus. And one of the things that's sort of a bit of a thing is a lot of kids catch the tram. So you catch the tram sort of back to where the main school is, and then they come home by their usual techniques or usual ways. Now, Julian did know how to catch a bus to and from school. Luckily, we lived in an area where it's quite straightforward. So he was able to catch a bus to and from school when he needed to. But the problem was where the tram stop was, there was a big, give way to the left, turn left any time with care. And the cars sort of race around there. So we were very nervous about him getting off the tram and getting to the bus from the tram stop to the bus stop because he had to cross there. So someone suggested to me that we get him a buddy. So we reached out to a young woman who he'd known since primary school, always really liked him. So I contacted her mother and said, is there any chance once a week she'd be prepared to buddy him? And the answer came back, sorry, no. Turned out that she had some anxiety issues that I was unaware of. And so that's a bit of a setback. But I had actually been to a workshop with Belonging Matters where they had some people there talking about who did provide families some support and who talked about how they really wanted to contribute to a family but didn't know how to. And when they got asked to provide a very specific piece of support, that they were really grateful to have the opportunity to contribute. So I got brave again and I asked someone else who lived nearby but I didn't know as well, and they were delighted to do it. And so once a week on Tuesdays, that boy came home they just made sure they caught the same tram and then just made sure he got across the road safely. And then they did catch the bus together, but Julian didn't actually need help to catch the bus together. And they actually got off at the same bus stop. So they would get off at the same bus stop, but then walk in different directions. And that just went perfectly all year. So being brave and asking is really important. And you'll find a tip sheet about that on the Everyone Can Work website. And then use your supports. You need all the resilience you can get. And so supports from your families, your friends, your peer support networks, your disability-specific organisation, even support workers for some things. It's really important that you ask for support and use the supports. It's a difficult period when you really feel like you're taking some risks. And so all of the support that you can, take all the support you can get. So this is the moment to ask questions. I've only had a couple of questions in the chat so far, but I would very happy for you to ask questions in the chat or for you to turn your microphone and video on and just ask me a question in real time. I can tell stories of success or not, if you like, or maybe you've got you've got a couple of specific questions you'd like to ask. As a general rule, Inclusion Australia doesn't have the resources to do any individual support. We're a systemic advocacy organisation, so we're not going to be able to take phone calls after the session for individual support. But if you did want to ask a specific question now, you'd be very welcome to. This is webinar 2. Webinar 1 was recorded. I'm not actually, Katie, can you put an answer in the chat as to whether that's on our website yet? I believe that we're in the process of getting it captioned, and so I'm not sure that it's on our website yet, but it will be on our website and we will put it out on social media when we put them on our website. Webinar 1 was talking very much about primary school age children and the sorts of things you might want to do now when you're thinking about employment. How easy it is to get SLES. One of the critical things about SLES is you need to ask for it the year you're leaving school. One of the things that we have heard, even though it says in the NDIS guide, it's for people who are sort of 18 to 22 or whatever it says, it's intended to start when they leave school. So if you go out of school and you do something else for a year, you tend not to, oh, there you go. Our workshop is currently on YouTube, but not connected to our website yet. So you can access it through the link that Katie's just put up. But I think we are going to improve, just letting you know if you have accessibility issues, that I think we're looking to improve the captioning. Yeah, so one of the issues with SLES is that you need to ask for it in the year that you leave school or the year straight after school. You can't sort of, that they seem to be stricter about starting SLES, say at age 20, which seems counterintuitive to me, and certainly at an advocacy level, we're talking to the NDIS about that. But the thing is that even 2 years ago, really the only thing that you could get for someone of that age was SLES. Now there's all these flexible employment. They in July this year, they released a number of other codes where you can do this thing called discovery, or you can just get more helping at an hourly rate, getting some, helping finding and keeping a job money, where you could just get a local support worker and do a tailored program on your own rather than going to a SLES provider, if you like. SLES is, I have to say that we have some concerns about the way that SLES operates. SLES was designed in the first place to become what they call DES ready. So one of the things that I haven't talked a lot about today is DES, which Disability Employment Services, and we will talk about them more in the next workshop. The reason we haven't talked about them today is that that's a support that kicks in after people leave school. You can't really get support from a DES while you're still at school, and today's been focused on at school. But what happened is that they found the rules of DES say that you have to be able to work 8 hours a week at least. And so it's for people with intellectual disability, maybe who are starting with a 4-hour-week job, you don't meet the qualification of 8-hour. Or it might be that as the person with intellectual disability hasn't developed enough work skills, and the DES provider has to find you a job within 2 years. And if they think it's going to take you longer than 2 years to get ready to work, then they won't take you on as a client. So the reason that SLES was developed was to be the buffer in between, so that you could develop all your work skills, develop a whole lot of work skills, and then be DES ready, then go and get supported from a DES. The problem is that by far and above, the majority of SLES programs are now run by organisations that also run day programs. And so what we're seeing is a whole lot of people doing classroom-based SLES, and then at the end of the 2 years, doing 1 or 2 stints at work experience, and then ending up in a day service. So we'd say really strongly, you've got to talk to your SLES provider about how many people got jobs at the end, how much work experience are you going to provide. So there are a couple of specialist providers that have real expertise in SLES providers who have expertise in people with intellectual disability, and what they do is do on-the-job training. So the idea is that you learn about taking instruction, you learn about being on time, you learn about stamina, you build your physical stamina to be able to stand up for a couple of hours to work or whatever, that you do that in a job. And that's really important. Who the SLES providers are, you ask around. You ask around. I can tell you that that there is a couple of organisations that do. If an organisation provides SLES and DES, they're likely to have some experience in this. So organisations like Job Support but Job Support are only in Melbourne and Sydney. There's another. I don't know whether they do SLES, but there are DES that do some good work with intellectual disability, is Nova. There's one called Barkuma in South Australia. If you look up DES, DES, and look up star ratings, you can see the top performing DES providers, and you can see if one of them's in your area. But one of the issues with SLES, it's asking around your local networks, and it's finding out where young people are going. And just because there's a program where the people are lovely, if they don't actually do work experience and they only talk about work in a classroom, I have to tell you that there's not a lot of evidence that that ends up in open employment for people with intellectual disability in particular. So you do need to ask around. Sorry, I'm busy falling behind on my time here. Eben, we probably should go to the next slide. So we will now talk about the Everyone Can Work website. So I'm assuming that quite a few people might have found out about us through social media or through the website itself. And we've put this website together specifically for people with intellectual disability. So it's for people at different ages and stages. So whether just starting out with thinking about employment or preparing to transition for school, or school leavers, or people who have gone into other settings and have decided later in life they'd like to have a go at open employment. There's practical information to help at each stage. There's evidence from research about open employment. There's some people's real life open employment stories, and some easy to understand, including videos, plain language, and easy read information. Although I have to confess the videos are not all on the website yet. And so I'd encourage you to keep your eye out towards the end of this month and early next month when some more videos will appear on the website. And it's been designed so you can revisit at different stages to find the information that you need. One of the ways to do it is to use the My Employment Pathway wizard that's in the website. So what you can do is click on Start Here, and then it asks you some questions. And as you answer the questions, it will come up with a range of resources that are on the website that are tailored to your age group. So depending on what age group you wanted to look at, we've particularly pitched it as age 4 to 14, so younger people, particularly around choosing school sort of age groups. Then age 15 is specific because that's when you qualify for the DSP. Age 16 is specific because that's when you should be doing work experience, and then preparing to leave school. So there's some really tailored information that might be helpful. You can also use the website search function, or you can just make your way around the site, because everything can be found by the navigation bars as well. And we've even got this, what we think is terrific. We've had some excellent feedback on this, the A to Z of employment, where there's a whole lot of terms that are used in open employment with some definitions. And so we're just trying to make it really easy for people to be able to understand what all the jargon means, because there's a lot of jargon and a lot of acronyms in disability, as I'm sure you already know. So that helps explain some of the technical terms that are used by us to mean certain things, or a lot of the terms that you see on the government websites, and explains what those terms mean. There's a question there. My son's NDIS plan is reviewed at the end of the next year. Do I need to find the SLES provider before the plan review? No, you just ask to put SLES in the plan and have an employment goal. And then once you've got SLES in the plan, you can go and find your provider. You're not required to have the provider beforehand. Do you think for the first few work experience opportunities to go in aiming to learn specific tasks? Well, I think it's up to you in terms of what your young person likes. I think early on, in terms of the approach that we took, we just went into different workplaces. We just tried a few things that we thought he might be interested in and that were available. It was hilarious. One of the things he really wanted to do was to work at McDonald's. As you heard him say, he really enjoys a hot chip or two. So he went to McDonald's because he really wanted to go there. And in week 1, he learned, we should have asked him, actually, Julian, are you still there? If you're still there, Julian, turn on your video and turn on your microphone. When you went to McDonald's, what did you do? What did you do when you were at McDonald's?
I was clear tables, clean the windows, or buckets of floors.
That's right. So they had a very organised system. Week 1, you learned how to clean the tables. Week 2, you learned how to clean the windows. Week 3, you learned how to clean the floor. So Julian came home, and did you tell me that you liked McDonald's better or working at the stadium better?
Both.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you like both now. But at the time, you told me that you liked working at the stadium much better because at McDonald's, all you did was clean. But at the stadium, you got to serve customers. And do you like serving customers?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Seeing-
So what happened there is he learnt that when he went to McDonald's, in fact, there's a lot of cleaning in fast food. Whereas some of the other things. What was your favourite work experience, Julian?
Um, hairdresser.
You liked the hairdresser? I think you liked the childcare centre too, didn't you?
Oh yeah, childcare. I mean, yes, childcare. I help kids learning.
You did help the kids with the learning. All right, I'm going to have to finish this in a sec, Julian. So thank you for that. You can turn off again. So yes, I think this is one of the things about starting early. If you start the work experience in year 10 and year 11 and you do a few, you've got the opportunity to just find a few places and get them to understand things like getting ready in the morning and being ready on time and all those sort of things, and talking to people who they don't know, asking questions. One of our big challenges is asking for help. Tends to just stand and look at you when he wants help. And so that's a real thing, even for safety as he gets older, that he needs to ask for help. So these are the things that you can do to make a difference. So thank you very much for participating in today's webinar. We would be very grateful if you were happy. We're going to send you a little survey afterwards. If you can tell us, or you can get it through the link that Katie's just put up. And so you need to think about, it would be really great if you were able to do the surveys, because we're funded through the NDIS. It helps us tell them whether or not what we did was successful, and certainly, in all seriousness, helps us tailor things to be as most helpful to families as they possibly could be. Just one last question. What insurance considerations do you need to have when asking for work experience? My understanding, that's different state to state. So in Victoria, where we are, it's really important that that's one of the ways the school can help you, that even if you do other work experience, that if you do through the auspices of the school has all the paperwork to make sure that happens. It's important that the employer has the person on their books as a work experience student, because then they're covered by work cover. Now, in Victoria, you have to get paid a nominal amount. You've got to get paid a lot of people, they pay $5 a day, and that gets you over the hump when it comes to insurance. But my understanding is different in Western Australia, for example. So you might have to explore that, but it is actually really important. And it's one of the reasons when Julian was at the canteen that we insisted he was put down on their books as a work experience student, because he then is covered by insurance. And so it is something seriously to think about. I hope that you found that helpful. Thank you very much, Susan, for saying that that was helpful. And okay. It looks, oh dear, Eben, it looks like I accidentally deleted all the contact details off that last slide. I suspect that might be our bad, but you can contact us through the website. So if you go into the Everyone Can Work website, there is, or it links back to the Inclusion Australia website if you need to contact us. So I'll apologise that not getting that just right. Well, I did better last week. I managed to finish exactly at 2 o'clock. I apologise for going over, and I thank you all for giving up your lunch hour, and all the very, very best. I wish you all the best. Let's hang in there together and help the world understand what great employees young people with intellectual disability are. Thank you very much.